This translation being, like its German original, designed for popular use, the Greek names occurring in it have been spelt in a manner familiar to English readers. A translation scarcely appears to offer a suitable occasion for attempting an innovation which has not yet been consistently carried out in more than one history of Greece in the English language. The translator regrets the inevitable necessity of altering the division of volumes adopted in the original. Owens College, Manchester, November 9th, 1867. We speak of Europe and Asia, and involuntarily allow these terms to suggest to us two distinct quarters of the globe, separated from one another by natural boundaries. But where are these boundaries? Possibly a frontier line may be found in the north, where the Ural Mountains cut through the broad complexes of land, but to the south of the Pontus, nature has nowhere severed east from west, but rather done her utmost closely and inseparably to unite them. The same mountain ranges which pass across the archipelago extend on dense successions of islands over the Propontis. The coastlands on either side belong to one another, as if they were two halves of one country, and harbors such as Thessalonica and Athens have from the first been incomparably nearer to the coast towns of Ionia than to their own interior, while from the western shores of their own continent they are still farther separated by broad tracts of land and by the difficulties of a lengthy sea voyage. Sea and air unite the coasts of the archipelago into one connected whole. The same periodical winds blow from the Hellespont as far as Crete, and regulate navigation by the same conditions, and the climate by the same changes. Scarcely a single point is to be found between Asia and Europe where, in clear weather, a mariner would feel himself left in a solitude between sky and water. The eye reaches from island to island, and easy voyages of a day lead from bay to bay, and therefore at all times the same nations have inhabited either shore, and since the days of Priam the same languages and customs have obtained both here and there. The Greek of the islands is as much at home at Smyrna as he is at Nauplia. Salonici lies in Europe and yet belongs to the trading towns of the Levant. Notwithstanding all changes of political circumstances, Byzantium to this day ranks as the metropolis on either side, and as one swell of the waves roll from the shore of Ionia up to the Salamis, so neither has any movement of population ever affected the coast on one side without extending itself to the other. Arbitrary political decisions have, in ancient and modern times, separated the two opposite coasts, and used some of the broader straits between the islands as boundary lines. But no separation of this kind has ever become more than an external one, nor has any succeeded in dividing what nature has so clearly appointed for the theater of a common history. As decided as the homogeneous character of the coastlands, which lie opposite one another from east to west, is the difference between the regions in the direction from north to south. On the northern border of the Aegean Sea, no myrtle leaf adorns the shore, and the climate resembles that of a district of central Germany. No southern fruit grows in any part of Rumelia. With the 40th degree of latitude, a new region begins. Here, on the coasts and in the sheltered valleys, occur the first signs of the neighborhood of a warmer world, and the first forests of constant verdure. But here also a trifling elevation suffices to change the whole condition of its vicinity. Thus a mountain like Athos bears on its heights nearly all European species of trees at once. And totally and utterly different is the natural condition of the interior. The Bay of Joanina, lying nearly a degree farther south than Naples, has the climate of Lombardy. In the interior of Thessaly, no olive tree will flourish, and the entire Pindus is a stranger to the flora of southern Europe. At the 39th degree, and not before, the warm air of sea and coast penetrates into the interior, where a rapid advance makes itself visible. Even in Phthisis, rice and cotton are already grown, and frequent specimens of the olive tree begin to occur. In Euboea and Attica, there are even scattered instances of the palm tree, which in larger groups adorns the southern Cyclades, and which in the plains of Messenia will, under favorable circumstances, at times even produce edible dates. None of the rarer southern fruits prosper in the neighborhood of Athens without special cultivation. While on the east coast of Argolis, lemon and orange trees grow in thick forests, and in the gardens of the Naxiotis, even the tender lime ripens, whose fragrant fruit, plucked in January, is transported in the space of a few hours to coasts where neither vine nor olive will flourish. Thus, within a boundary of not more than 2 degrees of latitude, the land of Greece reaches from the beaches of Pindus into the climate of the palm. Nor is there on the entire known surface of the globe any other region in which the different zones of climate and flora meet one another in so rapid a succession. The results are a variety in the living forms of nature and an abundance of her produce, which necessarily excited the minds of the inhabitants, awakened their attention and industry, and called mercantile interchange into life among them. These differences of climate are, as a rule, common to both shores, yet even the regions of the eastern and western shores, with all their homogeneousness, show a thorough difference between one another. For the similarity of the shores is not more strongly marked than the difference in the formation of the countries themselves. It would seem as if the Aegean were in possession of the peculiar power of transforming, after a fashion of its own, all the mainland. In other words, of everywhere penetrating into and breaking it up, and forming by this resolving process islands, peninsulas. Of forming by this resolving process islands, peninsulas, necks of forming by this resolving process islands, peninsulas, necks of land, and promontories, and thus creating a line of coast of disproportionately great extent, with innumerable natural harbors. Such a coast may be called a Greek coast, because those regions in which Hellenists have settled possess it as peculiar to them before all countries of the earth. The following is the difference between the countries on the eastern and western shore. The mainland of the eastern is only outwardly affected by this formation. As a whole, notwithstanding its peninsular shape, it is justly called Asia Minor, for it shares with the districts of anterior Asia the mighty elevation of the whole. Like a lesser Iran, it builds itself up out of the midst of the 3 seas, presenting in the interior a massy, inaccessible region of highlands of cool temperature and dry atmosphere, in which stony and ill-watered plains are freely interspersed with fertile districts, suitable for the support of great and hardy nations. Nowhere is the sea reached by the rim of this great tableland, which is belted on all sides by mountain ranges. The mightiest of the latter is the Taurus, a wall of rocks whose lofty edges and precipitous walls separate the southern districts from the heart of the country. Towards the north, in the direction of the Pontus, the terraces are ranged in more extensive breadth, with undulating hilly country and a gradually progressing declivity. Towards the west is the greatest variety of formation. In the direction of the Propontis and the Hellespont, the edge of the interior highland country rises to mountains of considerable height and well supplied with streams and pastures. The Mysian Olympus and the Trojan Ida. Towards the side of the archipelago occurs a sudden transition from the inland to the coast country. A line drawn from Constantinople straight through Asia Minor to the Lycian Sea roughly indicates the degree of longitude at which the masses of tableland suddenly break off, where the country is everywhere broken up into natural divisions and in wide, fertile river courses, opens towards the sea, which runs to meet them in numerous bays. Here is, as it were, the beginning of a new world, of another country, which resembles a border of a different material woven onto a garment, and where we, desirous of distinguishing the quarters of the globe according to the formation of their soil, we should have to set up the boundary marks between Asia and Europe on this line, which separates the country of the interior from that of the coast. Asia Minor, on account of the peculiar formation of its countries, comprehending the greatest variety of contrasts without any unity to connect them, has altogether never shown itself suited for a common national history. So much the more have the terrace lands of Asia Minor at all times been the theater of a history. So much the more have the terrace lands of Asia Minor at all times been the theater of a history, and the dwelling place of nations of their own, which have known how to keep themselves free from the dominion of the interior. The western border of Asia Minor consists, in the first instance, of the estuary land of the four great rivers which flow into the sea through valleys lying parallel to one another. The Mander, the Caister, the Hermus, and the Caicus, to name them in their order of succession from south to north. In no region of the ancient world was luxuriance of arable and pasture land so immediately united to all the advantages of an excellent coast formation. The development of the coastline of Ionia in all its bays and projections amounts to more than quadruple its extent in a straight line from north to south. On the north and south sides, this formation of coast is not so consistently the same, but only appears here in certain districts, to which, on the other hand, this very participation in the Hellenic formation of country has attached a peculiar mission of taking part in Hellenic history. Among these districts are the shores of the Propontis and the Caro-Lycian coastland. Thus, in the east, the sea has not been able to Hellenize more than the border of the mainland. It is far otherwise on the opposite side. Here also is massed the mainland, projected into the sea in a southward direction between the Adriatic and the Pontus. But this central body is not only, like Asia Minor, outwardly fashioned by the sea and dislocated on its coasts, but the very heart of the country continues to be broken up into peninsulas and islands, till, at last, it becomes entirely absorbed in this loose formation. The whole mass of the countries of western Greece is cut off by the chain of high mountain ranges stretching in a great arc from the Adriatic to the Black Sea, from all the districts belonging to the territory of the Danube, and is thus bidden to develop itself in a southward direction, as a world by itself, according to laws of its own. The Thracian Haemus, with its impervious ridges, constitutes a natural boundary, the difficulties of which prevent all national intercourse, while from Asia the approach is easy and open. In the same way, it is easy to recognize in the development of the entire southern mass of countries between the Adriatic and the Aegean the circumstance that the eastern or Asiatic side is always the favored one, i.e., that all the districts on this side enjoy an especially happy organization for a systematic political life, and that the abundance of harbors in their coasts imposes on them a special mission for maritime commerce. Thus, in the first instance, Albania and Illyria are nothing but a crowd of rocky ridges following one another in close succession, and of narrow defiles, with scarcely sufficient space left for roads to be constructed through them. Their coasts are savage and inhospitable, notwithstanding, then, that in ancient times caravans crossed the mountains in order to exchange, in the central land between the two seas, the produce of the Ionian Islands and of the archipelago, notwithstanding that subsequently the Romans constructed a main road from Dyrrhachium straight across the country. Illyria has, through the whole course of time, remained a land of barbarians. But how vast is the difference in everything which meets us on crossing to the eastern side over the Scardus Pass! Here, numerous springs at the base of the central chain swell